Hello YouTube, it's me again with the last installment from my video series on Canaan and his descendants. If you haven't watched my other videos, please go back and watch them so you'll know where we're at. For part 5 of this video series, I want to focus on identifying the current modern day dwelling places of the Canaanites. In order to find out more in regards to this, we need to take a look at some information on Wikipedia concerning the Atlantic and transatlantic slave trade, which took place across the Atlantic Ocean from the 16th through the 19th centuries. Now, I want to make this perfectly clear. I am in no way, shape, or form making this particular video to villainize any people or belittle any race. The purpose of this video is to educate and inform the viewer. With that being said, let's continue reading. It says here the vast majority of slaves transported to the New World were Africans from the central and western parts of the continent, who were being sold by other Africans to European slave traders, who then transported them to North and South America. So here it clearly lets you know that Africans themselves played a role in the slave trade. Not only that, but it says that the vast majority of these slaves came from the central and western parts of Africa. And if you watch my other videos on Canaan, you'll come to find out that West Africa was a land given to Canaan and his descendants by their father Ham. However, instead of settling in West Africa like he was supposed to, Canaan and his people decided that they liked the land of their uncle Shem better, so they settled in Israel. Thus, the Israelites were forced to wipe out some of the Canaanites, not all of them, and force them back to their rightful dwelling place in West Africa. And for those of you thinking that the Canaanites were wiped out when this took place, if you read Matthew chapter 10 and verse 4, as well as Mark chapter 3 and verse 18, you'll come to find out that one of the 12 apostles was a Canaanite, Simon. So here it lets you know that the Canaanites were very much living during the times of Jesus Christ. Keep in mind, this is New Testament. And it says here that the number of these slaves was so great that Africans who came by way of the slave trade became the most numerous Old World immigrants in both North and South America before the late 18th century. So it's letting us know that they repopulated heavily and quickly once they got to the Americas. Now we're going to read at what were some of the places these Canaanites inhabited in Europe. And you could find Canaanites in places like Portugal, the United Kingdom, France, Spain, the Netherlands, and last but certainly not least, the Americas. It says they had established outposts on the African coast. What African coast? The African West Coast. Where they, who is they? The European buyers. They purchased slaves from local African tribal leaders. Again, it reiterates the fact that Africans themselves played a role in the enslaving of some of their people. And you're probably asking yourself, why would they do that? It's no big mystery. I mean, just connect the dots. If you've been paying attention to the video series I made on this character Canaan, you'll come to find out that there were a few spiritual problems with Canaan. He was a rebellious one out of his 4 brothers, Cush, Egypt, and Put. And when he got out of hand, his brothers would round these Canaanites up and sell them to their slave masters, because at one time Canaan was hanging around with these enemies of Israel, who happened to be the same people that enslaved them. So it's kind of ironic. At one time, he was in league with these people, coming against his own brothers and his own family, and now they're getting sold into bondage to the people they once helped. But not because they were willing to serve them, but because they were forced to serve them. As they say, you reap what you sow, right? So yeah, that's why some of these brothers of Canaan would sell these Canaanites into bondage because of some of the lawlessness and some of their lifestyles that they like to live. Remember, if you read the Jewish encyclopedia, Canaan upon his deathbed left this to his children, the following rules of life. He said, "Let there be mutual love between yourselves, love robbery and unchastity, hate your masters and do not speak the truth." Those were just some of the many spiritual problems of Canaan. So if you bridge those dots and compare them to what is being said here, you can begin to see who were these Western Africans that were being shipped into bondage. Now we're going to read regarding the Africans' involvement in the slave trade. But first, let's read this little piece here that says, Western Africa became known as the Slave Coast, and later Central Africa became the source for enslaved people to meet the demand for labor. Again, it lets you know that Western Africa, which happens to be the land that the Canaanites were given as an inheritance by their father Ham, became known as the Slave Coast. And it's no big secret, it's no big mystery. Remember Genesis chapter 9 and verse 25. When Noah cursed Canaan, he said he would be a servant of servants unto his own brothers. So that's why you had Africans selling Canaanites into bondage. However, with that curse, there will also come a blessing. Believe it or not, Christ would turn that curse of Noah into a blessing. Christ said in Matthew chapter 20, verses 26 and 27, he said, "Whoever desires to be the greatest must become a servant. Whoever is chief among you, let him be your servant." And basically what Christ is saying is that the greatest is he who is the servant of all. And what did Noah say? Noah said Canaan would be a servant of servants unto his own brothers. What brothers? His brothers Cush, Mizraim, and Put. So the greatest right now amongst all four brothers is Canaan. I mean, just take a look at Egypt, Ethiopia, and Libya. Canaan right now is greater than his brothers. Look at the African Americans in the United States. If you gather them all up, they could be considered their own nation. They are very wealthy compared to their struggling brothers in Africa who are struggling economically. Remember, the Atlantic slave trade consisted mostly of Western Africans, who are Canaanites, and they were brought to South America, North America, Europe, and last but not least, the West Indies. Canaan's portion of land fell towards the west of Africa near the sea. You could read about it in Jubilees chapter 9 and verse 1. Among the various tribes of the Canaanites were the Girgashites, who on Joshua's demand subsequently left Palestine and emigrated back to Africa. So there it lets you know that there were Canaanites even during the times of the New Testament. Hence why you have one of the 12 apostles, Simon, who happened to be a Canaanite. Yes, Canaan is the father of slaves, and he is the greatest among his brothers today. God, however, is different from man. Man seeks to deprive his enemies of means of sustenance, but God, though he cursed Canaan to be a slave, he also blessed them to eat and drink of whatever his master possessed. I mean, just look at them now here in the United States. With that being said, let's read the Africans' participation in the slave trade. It says, Africans themselves played a role in the slave trade by selling their captive or prisoners of war to European buyers. It says selling captives or prisoners was common practice among Africans and Arabs during that era, just as it had been in ancient Europe. So slavery was not an uncommon thing back in the days. It says the prisoners and captives who were sold were usually from neighboring or enemy ethnic groups. Remember, the Canaanites were a bit rebellious. That's why their brothers, Cush, Mizraim, and Put, were forced to sometimes keep them in order, and when they would enlist, they would ship them out to do forced labor. It says these captive slaves were not considered part of the ethnic group or tribe. African kings held no particular loyalty to them. Again, these African kings are saying that we have no loyalty, we owe these people no loyalty, because remember, Canaan loved to worship false gods. They love to worship mammon, bling bling, all that crazy stuff. So when Canaan's brothers will get strict with him, they'll let him know, look, you weren't loyal to us when you joined our enemies and fought against us. Well, now we owe you no loyalty. You're going to go serve the people that you love to hang around with so much back in the days. So that's what it says here by these African kings holding no loyalty to these Canaanites when they were at odds with each other. It says sometimes the criminals would be sold so that they could no longer commit crimes in that area. Again, it's letting you know. It's letting you know right here that these criminals would be sold so they would not cause any trouble in the area. Again, it's no big mystery that Canaan upon his deathbed told his children to love themselves and love robbery and unchastity, and to hate their masters and do not speak the truth. Many of them do not like to admit that their own people forced them into slavery, and they hate to serve. Yet they don't understand that Christ said that those who are servants are considered the greatest. Right now, African Americans are great servants. Just look at the Africans in the Americas. They are great servants. Yes, even greater than some of the descendants of Japhet and Shem. But the majority here, they are greater than their own brethren, their own kinfolk, Cush, Mizraim, and Put. So I just thought I'd make this video because there's a lot of confusion with the Black Hebrew Israelite movement, claiming to be descendants of Shem, claiming to be of the tribe of Judah, when again, how can Ham, being the progenitor of the dark races, or what we call African people, how can his descendants, his 4 sons, Cush, Egypt, Put, and Canaan, these African family, be the same as the Shemite family? That's why it's very important that you put the pieces of the puzzle together. Otherwise, you're going to have all kinds of false doctrine being spread by people that can't even bridge these dots correctly. So on that note, I hope these videos are a blessing to those with eyes to see and ears to hear. And I'll see you guys in my next video, whatever that is. God bless.